Today, we are talking about trauma. Trauma in the body, trauma in the mind, releasing trauma, how trauma affects our body. We are talking about our body. We're talking about everything that we need to talk about that needs to be released in order for us to be more centered, more grounded, more aware, more mindful. That's what we're talking about. So let's call Chasten. Hi, Chasten.
What's up?
How are
How are
you?
you? I'm so good. How are you?
I'm good. I had a workout today.
Oh,
It, it,
good.
it,
I
it,
haven't got
put,
mine in yet.
it put me in the space that I needed to be to talk to you.
Oh. Well, I'm gonna piggyback off of your workout, Juju.
Yeah.
Space with you. I've got my yoga gear on because I'm gonna do a workout today. I'm gonna do a workout.
So happy to have you on Mommy Hour.
I'm
Um,
excited to be here.
yes. When you told me that you do embodiment coaching, I'm sure I'm like many people. And I was like, what is that?
Everyone asks that. Every single person.
Yeah.
I have a response, but what I've started doing is asking back, what do you think that it is?
Mm. Originally, um, both of us come from a theater background.
Yeah.
So originally I just envisioned me being in dance class and the dance teacher just drilling me to be more in tune with my body. So that's what my original thought was
Yeah.
initially. Yeah.
It's that,
Mm-hmm.
but not just in side of the constructs of a class where you're focused on your body or a certain form where you're focused on your body. It's focusing on living and being in your body through every action of life and every movement of life. Um, I believe that we are a very heady culture, and it's the source of a lot of our depression and anxiety. Because, I study the work of Philip Shepard, who wrote this book called Radical Wholeness that delves into this beautifully and way more articulately than I would ever be able to. But the brain is a beautiful, powerful, powerful tool, right? But the brain is our tool for imagination. Like, it is only capable of abstract thinking.
Mm.
So we want to get into the body because the body, feeling what the body feels, is the only way to be in tune with whether something is actually good for you or not. Your
Mm.
brain really cannot determine that. It can analyze data and make hypothetical assumptions. It can pull data from facts, but it could be a fact that, like, on allergy test that comes with my blood work, that, like, this doesn't come up as a trigger for me, but then every time I eat this food I have a reaction to it. And it's like,
Yeah.
well, the blood work says that I shouldn't have a reaction to, but my body says I don't like that. What am I going to listen to? I'm going to listen to the body because I don't like that.
Yeah.
So my work is really about reconnecting people back to their bodies, bringing us out of our heads back into our bodies from a more grounded place of intuition and being in this world. I don't think people are actually looking for happiness. I think they're looking for their journey to feel good and to
Mm.
feel good about their journey. That integrity that comes from being fully in tune with this hunk of flesh that we've been given to
Yeah.
carry us around this world. It's the thing that we have to experience and express. So I don't know why we don't have more focus and attention on it.
Yeah.
I could go down a whole rabbit hole about that.
Well, that's what we're doing. So, this week, of course, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and this week,
We're in the middle of a lot of things.
this week we're dealing with a lot. And it's taken me, this week has been so depressing for me. It's been so depressing for me. And because it's been so depressing for me being a mother of two boys, I have not been working out. I have not been moving. And I have felt horrible this week. And so let's talk about the importance of releasing the trauma in our body.
Yes, it's so very important. And there's different ways actually that it can be released. I am an avid believer that you just follow your body, do what it wants to do. Grief, we're grieving. We're grieving so many things.
Yeah.
And grief can be exhausting.
Oh, yeah.
It can be so exhausting. So, sorry, I'm looking at my dog that's getting to my plants. Fix it. Like, don't be eating my little baby seedlings. Grief is exhausting. And I imagine that I know when I'm grieving, the first thing that I need to do is like lay down in a bed, draw the blinds, pull the blankets, cry, and just let my body heal from the grief of the pain that it's experiencing. There's other times where I feel like I need to, I wasn't able to I'm not able to get outside and run because people aren't wearing masks on the bike path and I'm immunocompromised. So I don't want to take the risk. I tried to order a treadmill, but the one I wanted was like sold out. And so I literally just like stood in my door frame and just ran in place yesterday because like I couldn't get out to run, but I wanted to run. I wanted to run with the community. I wanted to run for Ahmaud. I wanted to run. So I was just like, I'm just going to run. Like I just needed to get it out.
Mm-hmm.
Your body tells you what it needs to release.
Yeah.
It's about how attuned we are with that. And I say attuned over listen because listening still is very a heady action. Like listening, we think we listen from our heads, we listen from our ears. We actually listen from our whole body. Your body will tell you, like, when you're in a funk, when you wake up in your funk and you're like, I'm going to cry today at some point in time.
Yeah.
You feel that bubbling up. You need to give it an environment where it can come out, it can release in order for you to feel grounded, to feel centered again. Yeah. So it's just about listening to that. Like sometimes you need to sleep. Sometimes you need to move. Sometimes you need to journal. Sometimes you need to call a friend and hold space for each other. Sometimes you need to put it into your work. Sometimes you need to put it into your art. And it's just about hearing what that is at any given moment and answering that call with like reckless surrender.
Yeah, radical self-care.
Yes. It's saying whatever my body says that it needs right now, I'm going to stop, do that, and give it to it right now. If that means I'm in the middle of my workday and I'm hungry and I need to eat, I'm going to stop and say, I'm sorry, I need to feed myself. I can't be a person.
Yes.
Until I come back. Sip smoothie.
So, because we are all so programmed to be such a heady culture of people, what led you to this journey? I mean, you don't just wake up saying, I'm going to start being more conscious of my body. It takes some experience. It takes some experience to give you some perspective. So what led you to this journey?
Well, so we both have a background in acting,
Mm-hmm.
and I always say that I've been interested in performance art because I am interested in the human experience. And I like studying it from the inside out. So I've always been interested in not just understanding it, but feeling it, which is why I think I went into performance art, why I think I went into acting. And throughout my training, I did my undergrad at NYU, I did my grad at Yale. All of the classes that resonated with me the most, because I was one of those actors that was very in my head. I'm a person that's always been very in my head. So, you do what you need the most,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the acting classes that resonated with me the most were the ones that were like Body is Source, Grotowski, Lucid Body, Alexander, everything that dealt with getting out of your head, getting into your body and feeling what it felt like, as opposed to thinking, what would this person be like? Oh, how would they be? Just get inside of them and feel what that's like. Because
Mm-hmm.
it's so complex, it's so layered. And it's
Yeah.
something that you can only tune into from the inside out, really. Um, so after school, I'm still continuing with my acting career, but I noticed that I was really interested in, hey puppy, I noticed I was really, really interested in continuing studies in those classes. So that's I sought out those teachers. Hey, when are you doing a workshop? Can I study with you? And it just kind of started to take a natural course, but I didn't know what it was for yet. I didn't really know what it was for yet. And I moved to LA 2 years ago, and I've been blessed to be teaching acting at a studio here in LA for a little over a year. And it was my first time really teaching and getting in a room with bodies. And we had such a good time. I just had such a good time sharing space with bodies. And I thought, I love teaching. I love teaching acting, but there is still something more that I'm supposed to be doing, and I haven't quite put my finger on it yet. Um, and it just all kind of started to come together last summer when I decided to go on a road trip. I had moved here for the sun, and it was June, and the sun wasn't here because it was June gloom. And I
Yes.
was, screw this, I'm leaving. So I summed up my place and I drove up the coast of California, Oregon, Washington, up into Canada, as far as Tofino for
Mm.
30 days. I had my tent in the trunk. I camped. I took my dog. We camped. We stayed in cabins. She was like, this lady's crazy, but I'm down for the ride. Like, she was my road dog. And on the journey, not only was I able to appreciate the transitory nature of life and that life is, because when you're on the road, like there's only so much planning you can do. There really is. So you literally just wake up in a state of like, okay, what's this day gonna be? I'm ready. And when we live in a culture and a society that plans ahead so much, you rob yourself of your ability to do that. So I was able to attune with that and attune with nature. And I stayed on this farm with with a friend of mine, Reg, who his birthday it is. I just wish happy birthday. And we were talking and having this deep conversation, and he was the one that gave me the book, Radical Wholeness. And I started to read it. And I was like, this is everything that I've been thinking and feeling since I was born, basically, articulated into the most beautiful language. And I feel so seen.
Mm.
And he is an embodiment, specialist, an embodiment coach, an embodiment trainer. And so that book has been the foundation of my teaching. I reached out to him and said, I want to study with you. I want to learn from you. So we've been working together for the past few months, and Also on that road trip, I came across, I was listening to a lot of podcasts. So I came across a podcast, BGIO, Black Girl in Ohm, Lauren Ash, and another Midwest woman, African-American woman.
Midwest girls.
Yes. And that was the first time that I realized that what had been missing from my life was sisterhood. And that I needed a stronger African-American female community around me. Because growing up in the Midwest, you're used to being the only person in the room a lot. And a lot of my really close friends who know me really well and that I love dearly are Caucasian women. And I realized listening to that podcast that there is a level of understanding and a depth that I haven't had access to yet, and that I needed to expound upon my community of sisterhood, my women that get what it's like to be an African-American woman in this world, in this country. And so I started leaning into that. And the more I leaned into that, the more I started to do work and research about ancestral trauma and generational trauma and racial trauma. And the more I realized, man, it's so hard because we've got a lot of trauma that we're carrying around, not only our own, but our families, our ancestors. We have so much trauma. It is so deeply rooted. It's too much. It's too much for our community to carry. It's too much for our bodies to carry, especially because we're carrying it in a world where we don't have access to release it safely. We release our anger. We get called angry, animalistic. We release our sadness. We're dramatic. Any big emotion or feeling that we have that we're entitled to because we've been through as a people, big emotional things.
Yeah.
There's no space for it. You have to keep it contained. You have to funnel it into eloquent rage.
Yeah.
And yes, we have to do that. There's value in that. I believe in that. But we also need a release for it. And that's what my work is about, getting us in spaces where we can come together and feel safe to go to those big, deep, furious, angry, sad, pleasurable, joyful places. The full range that we need to experience so we can have, like you said, that release.
Yeah.
If we don't release it, we're carrying it.
I think that as a people, we do carry a lot of trauma. I also think that as women, there's just a little bit more added into our bucket. Why do you think Black women in particular, hold so much trauma?
Yes, I actually was thinking about it. I'm so glad you asked, because I was thinking about this very topic of conversation just an hour ago, because I was listening to a podcast with Brene Brown. And the woman, gosh, I forget her name, but she wrote the book Untamed. And yeah, it's a new book that just came out. It's supposed to be really, really wonderful about untaming women, as women, untaming ourselves. And I was listening to it and I was resonating with it. Of course I was resonating with it because it's so real. You're right. As women, we've grown up in a very patriarchal, misogynistic, masculine driven, dominated world. So the structures that we've been fed, that we've bought into, have been fed to us by a man's dream of what they want us to be. And you add the extra layer of gender and race on top of that. And, it's my belief that trauma flows down the river, not intentionally, but just haphazardly. It flows down the river. So if a man feels abused, it's going to spill over and abuse the women. You
Mhm.
know, it's not it's not a coincidence that the majority of the abuse that African American women face is from African American men. And same with Caucasian women and Caucasian men. It's not a coincidence.
Mhm.
It all flows down the river.
Yeah.
And then guess what's also flowing down our river? Abuse from Caucasian men towards Caucasian women. And then the trauma from those Caucasian women flows down the river to us too.
Yeah.
So we're getting all the shit flowing down the river. I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I can curse, but we're getting it all, it's flowing down the river.
Mm-hmm.
And we're carrying it all. And we are strong. And because we are strong, because we have to be strong and because we are strong, I believe that no one, not even ourselves, are thinking about who cares for us. When do we get care? When do
We have to continue to hold it up. Like,
have
we can't release it. We can never just feel, because the show must go on. So
right. We're the holders. We're not the
yeah, no. I think when you become more emotionally aware of your body, of your mental space, when you're just more mindful,
yes.
you are able to detect who is not as mindful as you are. And you can just detect it. You can just feel it. Why do you think that there are so many emotional blocks for people to release their trauma?
I think that there's so many emotional blocks because there's not our culture doesn't value emotional release, emotional intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
We're just not taught that there is a space for that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, from the second that we come into this world as a baby and you open your mouth to cry, because coming into this world is a painful experience, right? The baby opens her mouth to cry. And what's the first thing that they hear? Shh.
Mm.
The first thing that happens when we open our mouths to express our legitimate feelings about a situation, we get told to shh. And it's not intentionally to be silenced, not at all. It's to soothe. But I think we need to reevaluate how we're soothing. Like, instead of saying shh, we can say, it's okay. I know it's hard. Feel what you need to feel, cry it out. I'm going to be here doing whatever I can to make it better. But until it's better, you feel what you need to feel. No one tells a mama shh on the birthing table. No one's like,
Better not.
it's literally like, let it out. This is hard.
Yeah.
And
And
so, yeah,
um,
there's not a safe space for it.
yeah. And so, because we've been shushed our whole lives, you become an adult and you don't even know how, even when you're presented with the tools,
Yes.
you don't even know how to release it. And then what's so heartbreaking for me is, like, some people have gotten to the point in life, old, young, whatever the range, but gotten into a point in life where, like, they can't even recognize that it's trauma. Like, you don't even know that you are completely traumatized and
Right.
you need help.
Right.
So, there's that.
There's that. And, the only thing that I can say about that is, I believe my superpower is presence,
Mm-hmm.
being in the presence of people. And through how I show up in my body, I think bodies hear that and attune to that. If someone walks into a space and their energy is grounded and calm, you're going to feel more grounded and you're going to feel more calm. If someone walks into the space and their energy is taut, tight, wrought with tension, you're going to start to feel a little more anxious. And so I'm just, like, I'm really just trying to, my work is literally just to circumvent the brain altogether, and just whatever we can do to soothe the body, to soothe the soul, to pleasure the spirit. It's with my clients, I have a whole section that's birthed around pleasure listening. Just spend a week, 2 weeks pleasure listening. Write down everything that gives you pleasure, the smallest things to the biggest things, the shade of the pink of this leaf of this plant that I love, the first breath of air when I walk outside in the morning, the sunset, always the sunset, watching the sparkles glimmer on the water from the sun, hearing birds chirping, listening to a stream, the color pink, like so many things, mangoes, so many things give you pleasure. And once you start to like turn on and listen to that muscle, your body starts to be like, oh, that feels good. Like, I like thinking about all of these things as opposed to all the things that make me want to close off. Pleasure allows the body to open, to soften, to release. And so I work a lot with pleasure.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's so many people walking around traumatized that have no idea.
So how do you think that for the people who are not as mindful as you, how do they identify the trauma in their body that's trying to get out?
I think that it's hard because even though I want to circumvent the brain, like, you just can't. You have to unlearn, you have to unravel. You have to understand why you need to listen to these things and go to these places before your body's ready to go there. Learning is always in two parts: understanding and feeling. There's two parts of the sixth chakra, which is like, I know, meaning like I know in my head this to be true, and I know, which is I feel it in my body to be true.
Yeah.
So you do have to start through the mind. You do have to start through the mind. And I think that it usually is an outside circumstance that leads someone to want to look at that work. Pain is a huge motivator for the human species. Pain. You feel a little pain, all of a sudden it's like, okay, we need to examine this because I don't want to feel that again.
Yep.
That's a huge trigger, a huge motivator, especially in everyone, but especially in men. And I do feel like there are more men in my life that are unaware of their trauma than women. And so, I just try and practice what I preach, to walk it, to be a living example of it, so that people feel it. So that people feel it and get curious about what's that feeling, what's that energy. I want to look at that more. And, some people, like you said, some people are just
running.
When you've been trained, you've been trained. And that's a really hard thing to undo. Some people don't want to undo it. Some people, self-growth is not their life value.
Yeah.
It's mine. But for some people, it's not theirs.
Yeah.
And, I think that in those situations, I think in any situation, like, always, always, always lead with grace, lead with compassion, because it all comes from somewhere, and it all comes from something real.
Yeah.
Very, very real. And it's dark to have to look at.
So you are in the process of planning an experience for people to get this training that you're speaking of. And, I have to say, when we met, you are a walking testament of your story. You really are. Your energy is very, very calming and very attractive. Like when you come in, it was like, oh, Midwest girl, and she's centered. Let me get closer. So if you can share a little bit about your virtual experience. I know you're planning one in June. So if you can share how we can find you and what that's going to be like.
Yeah, so I'm planning some beta workshops because I'm practicing what I'm preaching and doing over thinking. I don't like to overplan. I like to show up and learn hands-on and learn how best to serve bodies in their trauma healing journeys. So I'm doing some beta workshops starting in June. One of them is going to be a free offering just so you can come and get a taste of what I'm talking about, because it's kind of hard to understand unless you just do it.
Yeah.
And then I'm also going to be putting together a series called The Gatherings, because I think it's so important for us to heal and do our work in community, that brings together not only myself, but other healing practitioners, so that you can have a full range of like the poo-poo platter of options that are available to you. There's body work, there's breath work, there's sound healing, there's meditation, there's so many things. And I think that different things work to speak to different bodies. So it's important to explore them all to find out what makes your body sing the most. So gatherings, workshops coming at you in June. Follow me on Instagram at Plush Armor to stay, to stay updated on the offerings. Also, all the workshops will be on my website, plusharmor.com. So yeah, stay tuned because there's going to be some really exciting things coming up. I'm terrified and thrilled, and it's just one of those things that once you know what your path is, once you know what your journey is, you're okay with the process being messy. Like this whole thing is a first time endeavor for me, So I'm just showing up to be like, hey, how can I learn? How can I be of service to myself and to others?
Yep. Surrender to your journey. It's the most beautiful thing. It's the most amazing gift that you can give to yourself is surrendering to your journey. It's so powerful. Yeah. One word of encouragement for during this time, just one drop of encouragement for everybody listening.
Stay with yourself. When you find yourself wanting to leave, stay with yourself. When you find yourself gone or that you have left, find a way to get back to yourself.
Thank you so much, Chasten.
Thank you. Thank you for being such a pleasure to talk to. I have to say, like, you feel my energy because you have your own, and that's why we're so in sync and conversation flows so easily. So you got it, girl. Our bodies feel that alignment.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye. All of us have trauma in our body and we need to release it. So comment about how are you going to do that? If you even know that you have trauma in your body. It's not an individual thing. We all have trauma. And it's not always like a childhood trauma. It's trauma from everywhere, from living in this world. We all have trauma. So comment. Let me know how you're going to do that. I would love to hear from you. See you soon.